Thanks for coming. Today's demo is going to be on sanding, and we're going to answer the age-old question: why do you sand, and when are you done? Okay? You're sanding for two reasons. You're sanding, one, to pick tool marks off your piece of wood. Then you're sanding to prepare your wood for the finish. And depending on what type of finish you're going to use, it's how you're going to sand it. If you look at this piece of wood here, this is too bad. You know, most of the wood that you buy in the store, you might see marks like this. You know you have to sand this. And what we're looking for is just these tool marks, marked from where an adhesive was for a sticker. And all in all, this doesn't look like a bad piece of wood. So how do you know what to sand? Is you want to get a light source. And this is going to tell us what we need to sand. If we look at this with a light, we can see all kinds of marks in here. We can see tool marks up here. So you can see the tool marks fairly easily, especially here. Again, the tool marks. So we want all that stuff gone. Here we've got a tear out. Here we've got really serious tool marks. Here, this looks fine. But if I'm looking at it this way, I can see dark splotches. And you can probably see if you look up there through the light, all those dark splotches are low pieces of wood. So we've actually got low points here, 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 and here that we really couldn't see unless we used the light to reflect on them. So because they're low, any sanding we did wouldn't touch those low pieces. That would not give us a nice smooth finish. So now we know what we're looking for. How does sanding affect the finish? Finish has to grab the wood. The slicker the wood is, the harder it is to grab. An oil finish is the only finish that goes into the wood. All the other finishes lie on top. So an oil finish, we want to sand an oil finish more because you're actually feeling the surface of the wood because the oil's gone inside of it. So to at least 220 grit. A film finish lays on top, and when it hardens, it kind of levels out, and you really don't touch the surface of the wood. A film finish, you only need to sand to about 180, because once you put the multiple layers of finish on, then you're not touching the wood. The wood is blocked from you by the finish. Two main reasons, again, like we said, we sand. We sand to prepare the wood, and we sand for the finish. This is the normal sandpaper you would use to prepare the wood. And there are 6 grits. Starts at 80 and goes to 220. Okay? This is dry sanding. This is expecting you to either attach this to a backer and sand it, or do something. This is dry sanding, no water. This is shaping the wood, and it's also preparing the surface for the finish. This is designed to sand your finish. That's why it says wet, sand wet. I highly recommend that any finish sanding be done by hand, because one of these machines will blow right through your finish like nobody's business, because the finish is very thin. So you can see that there is much more paper finish sanding than there is for the wood sanding. So this is being used until your tool marks and any low spots and any glitches are removed. This is after the finish has been on and has dried enough so that it's really, really hard. Normally you'll leave the finish sit on there for 2 to 3 weeks before you attempt to use this, and this is always used with water. So we've got wood sanding, we've got finish sanding. And the big difference is this says wet on it. This is really designed just for finish. Now, there is a sandpaper you can buy at auto shops, and it's a non-clogging sandpaper. It's called a Ceratid, something like that. Don't use that for wood. That's got soap in it. And when you sand with that, it prevents clogging, but you're going to get soap in your wood, and then the finish is not going to adhere to it because you've got soap in there. So try to get finished sandpaper that comes from a wood store, because it won't have soap in it. It's all designed to be used dry unless it says wet on the label. It's what they expect to use water. So that's what we got here as far as the papers we're choosing from. Now, papers come cloth back. This is a regular paperback, cloth back. This is regular paperback. This is waterproof paperback, because if you put water in, it's going to break down, the sandpaper is going to fall apart. This is a new sanding. This is called mesh, and this works really, really well. And mesh is just what it says. You can see through it. It's easy to use. It fits on any sanders with parts are different. This doesn't care because air goes through this. If this gets clogged up, you take it off and you go like that, whack it on your hand, and you can put it back on and keep going. This lasts longer. The problem with this is this uses hook and loop. Part of the hook and loop is can come up through these holes. And as the more you sand, the smoother it's going to get. And pretty soon all the hook and loop is gone from the bottom of your sander and nothing will stick to it. So these come with these pads. And this is what you would put on the bottom of your sander, just like that. And then this goes right on top of that. So the longer I use this, piece right here will get used up. When nothing sticks to it, you take it off, throw it away, put a new one on, and keep going. So that's what you have to do for the mesh. You need to have this interface pad. Another thing this allows you to do, if you're going to sand a flat surface like a desktop or a countertop, basically this is what you want. If you're going to have anything with a curve to it, you don't want a flat. You want the sandpaper to go around the curve. In that case, and you can get this for all of these sanders, you want this. This is a sponge. Now this isn't made just for this. This is made so that you have the spongy surface. So if you've got doors or carvings or something, it's a very good job of getting around. And again, sandpaper sticks right to it. So now you've got this nice, easy, and this will follow contours without flattening curves. You want this nice spongy. This is really good for near the end of what you're sanding. Okay. Instances where we use sandpaper, we are going to use some type of backer behind the paper that are not our fingers. And the reason we do that is because we don't put pressure evenly. And if we're sanding with our fingers, if we're sanding this way, we're actually putting grooves into the wood. And well, you might not see it when you're sanding. Cleans up really well. If you put a high gloss finish on, those would stand out like crazy. So a backer is going to give you a uniform finish. Backers can be easily small little blocks of wood like this that the sandpaper is attached to. You can get sandpaper that's already got a backing to it, like this foam here. And these are great because these come off in sheets. And now you've got this is a between, and if I folded it like this is even better. So I can hold this like this, and because of the foam and the way this is, This sands very easy. Now, one thing about sandpaper, the finer the grit, the more dust it generates. Since the grit's smaller, more of it contact with the wood. So when you're hand sanding, you really, really want to have a mask on for dust. Because this stuff will float around in your shop. And we've got this dust on here, and this dust will get everywhere. You can see it in here. And if you want to put a finish on now, you want to get this dust out because this dust is going to contaminate the finish. You won't get a beautiful looking finish. You're going to get a very dusty finish. So we want to make sure we get this dust out when we go on. And holes like this, we're going to have to vacuum it out. I would highly recommend everybody use in their shop a bunch of this. This is microfiber cloth. This gets rid of the dust very well. It's not like those old cloths where it had sticking on it. There's no stickum on this. And you can see now that all that dust is gone, and it's a much darker color. So, dust collection is important. You want one of these. And now, feel the difference in that surface and the rough surface underneath that hasn't been touched. So this is why we sand. Now, sanding takes a while, but it's got to be done. You're going to spend hours and hours and hours on a project. And it seems a shame to lose it right at the end because you just didn't like sanding. It's important. No matter what you do, you sand it through planers or anything else, you're always going to end up sanding. People say, well, maybe if I skip grits, it's cheaper and I can faster. And you really can't. Look at all these. There's 6 sanding stages to take it to 20. 5 if you're only going to 180 from film finish. 80 grit is more for bulk removal. You are taking off too much wood. You're shaping the wood. You're taking off all the big tool marks from the joiners and the planers. You go to 100. The 100 is taking off the scratches that the 80 put down. And it's also a type of sander that will actually mold the wood. 120. Now you're taking off the 100 scratches. 150. Now you're taking off the 120 scratches. 180. Now you're taking off the 150 scratches. This is the magic. At this scratch pattern, it's very, very difficult to see. At 200 or 220, you're taking off the 180. This is just about impossible for humans to see the scratch patterns in this. Our vision is defined as our ability to see patterns in things. That's why random orbit sanders were such a hit when sanding came instead of hand sanding, because hand sanding, normally we're taking the hand sander and we're just going like this. And all our scratches are an up and down scratch pattern with the grain. And we can see that pattern in the wood. But if we sand like that, moving our arm around in an orbit like this, still going with the grain, but doing this, these disappear. So you always want to try and have some randomness in your scratch patterns. This will do it automatically. This, you've got to supply the know-how. This is a hand sander attachment made by these people that attaches to their vacuum. So if you're hand sanding with this, there's no dust. You can adjust the vacuum by some of the devices you put on here that it could really suck down, pull as hard to the wood, and then it's really hard to move, or you can release some of the vacuum pressure and it makes it easier. Just whatever is more comfortable for you. There's really no right or wrong to this. It's just about personal comfort, but this does an excellent, excellent job. This is my favorite sanding block. We sell them here. This is designed for a 5-inch disc. So with a lot of the blocks, what you've got to do is cut the sandpaper to fit the block. This one you don't. This takes right out of the box. You just got to be careful because the Velcro picks up anything, like little pieces of wood. But the same thing. All I'm going to do now is just take it, wrap it on this side, pull it tight, and this is very, very easy to use. Use this and it's comfortable in your hand, easy for your fingers, meant to sit in the heel, and you push with your heel, you pull back with your finger. So it's just an easy motion. You can do this all day long, and it does a great job. Again, with this, clean, let's do this side. This is 150 grit. So 150 grit, to get these marks out, I'm going to be here for a long, long time. And it's sanding, there's the dust. But it hasn't looked like I've done anything, because these are so deep. Which brings me back to ideas about the grip. Basically, an 80 grit's going to cut a big V. 100 grit's going to cut a V half the size. 120 is half that size. 150 is half that size. All the way up. So that's what's getting rid of these scratches. So to get rid of this stuff, I've got to be very, very aggressive. And let's see, do I have, oh yeah. This is 60 grit sponge. Again, I like these. These do a great job. Now, this is something normally we would use this grit on here, but this is very, very aggressive. This is for forming wood. So I'll sit here with this. And now, you can see the difference here. I've still got these tool marks. This needs you to know that sanding is not fast. Sanding has never been fast. So this is what we have to put up with. Just that, knowing it's a lot of elbow work, especially in this initial stages. Where it works out best, here it is. Where it works out best, aggressive grit like this 100 grit here. And this is where tools really shine. A good sanding is a combination of tools and us. I'm not pushing down on the sander. I'm holding the sander. The weight of the sander is all the pressure you need to sand. Same with all these sanders. Hand is different, but a machine, these are designed to have a certain weight, and that weight is going to sit on the wood, and all we're doing is just moving it around. So don't push it down. This is the dust in just a little bit of time I generated. We don't want that flapping through the shop. So normally you want a dust collector on your sander to get this dust and suck it in. It's using the motor of the sander to throw dust in that little bag, but you can see all the dust that it missed. This is the dust I just pulled off that, just wiping the top of the wood. So there's still a lot of dust on here. I take this really great microfiber cloth, and now all the dust on my hand is gone. Now the dust on this is gone, and the tool marks are gone here. Now you can see that tool marks are still there. That's where the machine really shines. The machine is going to make this much, much faster. Now, is it going to come to a point where if you want to, you can switch the machine to hand? You really don't have to do that for this series of sandpaper. Up to 220, the machine will do a great job. This, no machine. So use the machine in the parts you can use the machine, and it'll make it much, much easier for you. The parts that you can't use it for really for finishes or for plywood. If we were doing plywood, this is a beautiful piece of plywood. The problem with beautiful pieces of plywood is that if you're not paying attention, this really holds true with veneers. If you're putting on a veneer and you want to sand a veneer, you blow right through it. And this is not recoverable unless we put a whole new veneer on it. So that's why in really thin stock like plywood or veneers that we're putting on, hand sanding only. It's really hard to do this hand sanding. It's really easy to do this with the machine because that's how thick that final layer is. It's just really, really itsy witsy, teeny tiny. And again, that's really unrecoverable. So if you worked really hard and this was shaped this perfect and everything, and you were doing this right at the very end, you get very upset. So again, we can do stuff and just take our time. Sanding is not something you should be rushing in. Things aren't going to work out well. Now, there's also different ways to sand. And again, these are the machines. They do a good job. 3-inch, 5-inch. Also have big machines that you can sit in your shop and have big discs or big belts or something like that. Those are all good and they all have their place. But just for general, I'm the hobbyist, I want to make something pretty. Most of the sanding we're going to use is a 5-inch random orbit in hand sanding. And we can do a really, really good job with this. Sanding blocks are great. They allow us a little bit more flexibility, like this. This does a great job. Again, this is a 60 grit. It will take stuff off. It just takes much longer than one of these does. Now, there's other sanding tools that we could use. Glen's talking about wood stuff now. For wood, we could use these sanding blocks, like I said. We can also use these. This is a sanding drum. And this is an 1.5 inch drum. And how this works, the threads on this are a little backwards. So in this one, right is loose. But you can see when I loosen this up, this little plate right here loosens up. With that plate loose, you buy a bag of these little drums, and one of these drums goes over that, just slides right over top. Then once you've got the drum on there, you tighten this with a wrench again. Got to remember to turn it the opposite way. And they do this so it won't unravel when you're using it. When you tighten it, it pushes that plate in here, makes the drum expand, and the holes is in place. So what is this for? Well, suppose I drilled a hole in something, a nice big hole, like for a plant, potted plant or something. I can sand with this. With I can fast or slow as I want just by pulling the trigger. The neat part is too that right now as this is turning, this would be throwing dust up in my face. The sandpaper and the wood don't care which direction the sandpaper is going. So put the drill on reverse. Now it's turning away from me and it's going to throw it out this way. So now I can sand and I can throw the dust that way. So this does a really good. It's good for rounding over corners. It's good if you've got a space to get in here and work on. This is a handy little tool. Much easier. You just have to hold it like this. You can also use it in a drill press. It does a great job. The only thing in a drill press, you want to make sure you've got a piece of wood with a hole in it that's a little bit bigger than this. And that's so the wood you're sanding could hit. If you have this just above the table, then the bottom of the piece of wood you're sanding would never touch the drum. And you'd have a nice sanded edge with this much poking out with nothing. So that's why you make a little piece of wood with a hole in it that this is going to sit in. No, it doesn't need to touch the sides. But that's going to allow you to get the wood you're sanding right to the edge. You can also use one of these. This is a disc sander. This is great. And this uses these little discs right here. The little fingers, when you put this on, it's going to fold over the side. The fingers are. So you don't have a sharp edge that hits the side of your wood that you're sanding and put the groove into it. But with this, again, big sanding pad here, I can come in, I can do all kinds of work. It makes it really easy. They make 2-inch ones too. You can clean the thing. So this is another way to sand. This works really, really well. And off you go. There's oodles of different ways to sand. If you've got little nooks and crannies, you've got these tools are designed to help you get into nooks and crannies sanding. They'll have little flat parts like this that get in there. They'll have even smaller ones that you can get in there. I like these. These take regular sandpaper. And let's say you had a groove and you wanted to sand inside the groove. So your groove is about that one. All you do is take your piece of sandpaper you want to use. You can use the foam ones. You could use one that you cut. And now I can hold it this way, and I've got a round surface so I can sand in the groove. So these are very, very helpful. If you're making cutting boards and you've got a juice groove or blood groove as the carving board, let you sand inside the grooves. You're doing doors or things like that have got the designs in it. In different shapes, both like this for an inside, or there's some that are cut the other way for an outside. So this really allows you to get in there and get a good contact with the wood and make sanding that much more easy. You've also got sanding sticks. So if you've got something that's got an intricate pattern like a carving and you really want to sand the carving, it's tough to get the sandpaper in there. Here you've got little sticks with sandpaper on here. And you can go right in there and sand all those little nooks and crannies, and it does a very, very good job. If you sand a lot and your discs start to build up, especially ones on power tools, I can take this, it's like a giant eraser. I can turn this on and I can just push this here and name it across. And I can get a lot of the debris out of here and extend the life of this. So these are very good if you do a lot of sanding and your stuff is clogging up. This takes the clog out. It's basically just a giant eraser. For turning, a lot of times for turning, now this is cloth back paper. It's very strong, holds together well, and I can unravel pieces of this, and as the wood is turning on the lathe, this allows me to sand. It does a very good job. So for what you want to do, basically there's a do it. Whether it be turning, whether it be interior for holes or things like that, whether it be shapes that you've cut with a router, hand sanding for finishes. There's all kinds of papers designed to do what you want to do. Just know that this is what you'll be using more than all the others. It's just the standard papers. Don't skip grits. Skip grits is going to cost you more time. The 100 is half the depth of an 80. A 120 is 4 times. So I have to sand much, much longer with 120 to get all the wood down enough so the 80 scratches are wiped away. But if I use the 80, then the 100, then the 120, you're using more paper, but you're not using it near as long. It's much, much faster. It's much more cost effective because your papers are going to last much longer. There is no shortcuts in sanding. You really have to do step by step by step. If you want something special, a special sanding device, there's 2 things you can do. Suppose I'm making boxes. And when I make boxes, I glue the whole box up, and then I've got to cut the lid off. Well, I want that lid in that box, the top, to fit very, very flush. So what you normally do is to get rid of the saw marks from when you cut it open, you sand it. If you sand it by hand with one of these, you're not going to do it the same on every part. And then when you put it together, you're going to have gaps. And there's no way to get around it. But I can take this, and I can put a spray adhesive on the back and glue it on a piece of plywood. And now I can take the box and go like that, and I'm sanding the whole surface at the same time. If I do the top and bottom, all marks are gone, and we're good to go. This is the same thing, except this has already got the adhesive on it. So what I do with this is I cut this into strips and just lay the strips on the plywood, put the box on, and off I go. So again, knowing that you want to do certain things that just by itself won't do, you can use stuff with adhesive on it or put your own adhesive. Does great for any boxes I do when I cut off the top. I always sand with this to get the tool marks off. Because when you open that box up, all you're looking at is tool marks all around and all around. You've got to get them off of there. And that's how you do it. Now, about sanding. But there's going to come a time when you might want to talk about sanding a finish or polishing a finish. Okay? This is the papers you use. You've got to use them wet, and you do them by hand. You can also use these. These are called non-woven abrasive pads. And these are great. I use them all the time. This is the gray pad. This is like 4/0 steel wool. The red pad is like 3/0 steel wool. 1/0 steel wool. No abrasive whatsoever. But this is outstanding if you're putting on a finish, especially a wax finish. This is what you do to really work it in. It doesn't abrade the surface, so you're not generating dust when you do it. So this is for applications for finishes and waxes. To put them on, it does a really great job. This is for actual abrading the surface. And this does a very, very good job. I've got some pieces cut up here, because I always cut them up. Oh, here they are. So again, here's my place with 100 grit I just used. So this is used I'll put a little water on this, and I am going to work on this finished top. And this is like, again, 4/0 steel wool. Since it's very fine, it takes a long time, but you can see we've built up some dust already. Okay? And we can start to feel a difference. But this, we wouldn't normally use on this step. But if we were going to use it for a finish, we put a little water on this and just work it with the grain. You use your fingers. If you don't want to use your fingers, you use a backer pen. It doesn't matter. Because this, we're using an existing finish. We're not going to sculpt the wood. The grit we're using, we could use with our fingers, whereas this one, it'd be visible. This one, it won't be. Add underneath it, and off you go. And this will do a very, very good job. I like it. What I like about this, or if it's steel wool, is steel wool can break off, and you have little pieces of steel wool on top of your project. If you don't get every piece up and put a finish on it, they'll rust in the finish. This won't happen. So I like this because of that. You could also get, this is called micro mesh. Micro mesh, they make it for acrylics to make it shine like water, or they make it for wood. Micro mesh only for finish sanding. This is not for shaping, this is for finish sanding. And what you're doing with this is you're going to put a finish on here. And then this is your block. These are all your different layers. You're going to wrap this around the block with water, and you're going to work on the finish. It's a good job. This is basically this is industrial diamond dust. It does a very, very good job. It's to make a finish really, really glossy. So if you're looking for a bright finish on wood that looks like it's wet all the time, but again, this is when everything is done. This is all finished sanding. So sanding is critically important. You're going to do better if you both hand sand and use the machine. If you're going to use the machine, I highly recommend a 5-inch random orbit. Again, with any type of sander, we're not like this. We are just guiding it. You should be able to hold your sander like that with fingers and just guide it around. You don't want to be pressing down. You're going to make this less efficient if you do that because you're slowing the rotation of the pad. If you're doing this, you're keeping it as normal rotation, and it will abrade faster. So pressing down is going to make you there much longer. And you see how fast generated dust. Just a little bit of sanding. We got all of this right here. And we don't want to breathe this. So we wanted to get this out of our shop. If you're going to finish a beautiful finish, you're going to work on it. You're going to walk out of the shop, you're going to kick up more of this, and it's going to land on your finish. So we really don't want this to gather. It's very, very, that we collect this at the source. So you do want a vacuum. You can get stuff that the vacuum is there for your hand sanding, but if it's not, you need microfiber cloth. The nice thing about this is if it gets really nasty and dusty, then we just take it in the washing machine and wash it. Use this over and over and over and over again. Microfiber cloth. It does a great job. It traps everything in there. My hand is clean again. You just can't have too many of these. And what I do is I have I got 2 packages. I got like 10 in my shop. Number 8, when number 8's all dirty, I take the 8 in and wash them all at the same time and just use the 2 until the other come back. But this is really, really a godsend when it comes to sanding. Plus, it's going to clean off the surface so you can see what's going on with the wood. And again, plus, if there's any places that are rough, This is smooth. Oh, this microfiber cloth tells me I missed something over here, so I need to come back and sand that. But you should get a uniform feel over the surface of the wood. And take this cloth, I'll pass this around, everybody do this. Rub over here, and you will find instantly where the sections on this thing that need to be sanded are. Okay? Just pass that around, just rub it all four sides, and you'll see how easy it is to find out that you might have missed something. Okay. Any questions about anything I covered here?